Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lords of Limited. My name is Ben Warney, and joining me on the line, as always, Mr. Ethan Survival Sacks. Ethan, you making it out of Duskmourn alive?
Oh, I have to. I gotta say, I was really enjoying seeing some of your tweets. I forgot that that's when you come out of the Twitter woodwork is preview card season. And I'm always surprised. I'm like multiple Ben tweets in one Twitter scroll. But I think this set looks really good. I know we're always excited about sets, but I have been pretty disappointed as we, are rounding out the year of limited. I've been pretty disappointed with the formats this year on a whole. Duskmourn looks really awesome to me.
There's just a lot of cards that we've seen already that I am excited to play with, I think, which just matters a ton.
And I'm really excited to talk to you about this. I mean, we have really not gotten to chat about the previews. We chatted a little bit about maybe retooling how we're going to approach this episode and the next episode. But I just was like, I've been on vacation this past week, and I can tell that, it's a really good sign that when you come back from vacation, I was like, I'm excited to work today. I'm excited to podcast and edit and think about these cards. And yeah, I'm really excited. I think part of that is it feels like there's a good amount of meat on the bone for Duskmourn. So we're going to chat about not actually as many previews. I feel like usually we go for quantity over quality on these episodes. It was a real journey because for a while, well, by the time we recorded this episode, maybe 22 commons or uncommons had been previewed.
And we were scraping. We were like, well, should we delay recording until Monday so we can see a few more previews? And
right.
now, 2/3 of the set is out by the time we record this previous episode.
And so I think we never really fully recalibrated to be like, we actually don't need to try and talk about every single common or uncommon. So in the spirit of, I think, our new approach to these early format episodes, just really want to focus on either the cards we think that are going to matter or the cards that really have us scratching our heads. I definitely have a lot of cards that I'm like, I think this is good. Is this good? I think this is bad, but is this bad? And there's new mechanics and that throws wrenches into things. So we're just going to have a lot to chat about.
Well, there's just a lot of cool cards too. I mean,
yeah.
Spoilers, this is the longest list of greater garbage cards we've ever had.
But again, that's all baked into this idea of I just want to pick your brain because we haven't really gotten a chance to, usually we even have just a few cards we send back and forth whoa, did you see this one? And it's just no, I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are. So we got a lot to chat about. We'll talk about the new mechanics, some example cards there, and then we'll get into looking at a lot of cards from Duskmourn. And first things first, let's chat about the Patreon page. Patreon.com/Lords of Limited is where folks can go to give back to the show if they so choose. We have a lot of awesome perks over at the Patreon. We actually have a lot of awesome perks that are coming to the Patreon. We're retooling those and chatting about them in the coming weeks. But for now, new set season is a great time to get in on the Patreon because you get access to the Lords of Limited Discord. It's hopping, it's popping, 24/7 limited tech support. New set season is the best time. Just really cool to follow along in the Duskmourn previews channel and see what other folks have to say about certain cards. People are already dickering and dealing about what are the top commons. Someone actually had a really cool idea that maybe we'll try next time to have just a channel where only the image pops up, only the card image pops up, and then people can respond with emojis of a letter grade that they want to give it or whatever. And then we could sort of start to get a little Lords of Limited Discord community aggregate grading for individual cards, which I think is a pretty sweet idea. So we might roll that out next set. But for now, we got great stuff happening at the Discord, and it'll be awesome to see once the full set drops. We'll have practice drafts firing, and then we'll have people breaking the format wide open in week 1. And we also want to welcome our new patrons the first week that they join. So this week we're welcoming Colin, Benedict, Karhu, Chris, Jake, Lionel, and Andrew. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, cannot say thank you enough. We also want to welcome to the show a new grading scale, potentially.
Okay. see, he's already got the caveat.
Potentially. Did you hear that? Did you hear me stick that in there?
I did hear the potentially stuck out to me, actually. You know what? We've thought about it. We've gotten a lot of, I think, overwhelmingly positive feedback, not in the sense of, we've got people who are we want you to try out this grading scale. And we're referring to the grading/number scale that we threw out a couple weeks ago that I think Ben is particularly trepidatious about because he sort of just came up with it on the fly on the show, and I just took it and ran with it. But we got feedback that people want us to try it, and I think we just got feedback that people were just give it a shot. We're on board with you giving it a shot, and I've been calibrating my brain over the past few weeks as I've been looking at spoilers, I've just found it kind of freeing to think about cards in this new framework. And I think the reason I wanted to bring it up now, one, is to just sort of start to repeat the rules of what this grading scale is before we get into the crash course. And I think it'll probably come up as we're talking about cards this episode.
Right. So we should say what it is. So the idea behind the grading scale is that we're trying to separate out cards that matter and cards that don't matter, and cards that do matter being cards that actively pull you into a color. So kind of the split between C plus and B minus is the most important grade. So that anything B minus or higher, we would be assigning a letter grade to, a la the traditional limited resources grading scale. Anything C plus or lower, we're saying those cards don't matter quite as much. And specifically with the thought that uncommons matter way more than commons now in the play booster era. So rather than trying to dicker and deal about C plus, C, C minus, whatever, we're just going to give cards C plus and lower a number, either 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, based on how many archetypes we expect it to go in. So for example, if something goes in exactly one archetype, it's only going to get played in black-green, we would give that a 1. Or maybe some of the commons that are fairly replaceable, the 5 mana value, 6 mana value cards that maybe don't really have a home anywhere, playable, but you don't really care about them, those might get a 0. So a 0 doesn't necessarily mean unplayable, doesn't mean we're giving it an F, it's just that we expect it to not matter in any archetype. If something like, say, the duos, I'm blanking on the names from Bloomborough because I've already blocked it out from Trauma, but Baker's Bane duo would be a 4. That would go in all 4 decks. And then we're also reserving the right to give things a plus based on them being more important or cards that we expect to matter even a little bit more. So I think Baker's Bane duo would probably get a 4 plus.
Yeah, but I don't want to get in the weeds with pluses and minuses attached to the numbers, but I did think it might be worth, again, in the spirit of focusing on cards that matter, giving ourselves the opportunity to say, hey, I think this 4 is going to be really good. So a 4 plus or a 1 plus if it's going to play really well. And there's worry that, well, this set may not be as, streamlined as Bloomborough, where the numbers seem like they might make more sense. But I do think, the archetypes do seem to be doing pretty specific things here as well. And, you're going to have a green card that's going to care about Delirium, and that's going to go in red, green, and black, green, and probably white, green, and blue, green aren't going to care about it as much. Well, that gets a 2 and that sort of thing. And I just would like to give this a shot. So we'll repeat this again next week. And again, the point of this grading scale is just for preview season. Once we get our hands on the cards, then we'll have a much more nuanced way to discuss them. But I think this, in the spirit of let's really give ourselves, you and me, and our listeners, the opportunity to have as much of a leg up going into week 1 as possible, to then let's just have our eyes on the cards that we think are going to matter in the game.
Well, and I think also if you're not into this idea, it doesn't really affect you. You
Yeah.
don't have to be on board. We're not trying to change the grading scale for the entire limited community.
No.
This is largely for the crash course so that we can foster better discussions and target cards that matter more to have discussions about, to give you better information ultimately for week 0 of the format.
All right, so let's get into the new mechanics. We have a really wild new card type to kick things off, which is rooms. These are split cards that are permanents. So each room card has 2 halves. Each half is called a door, and you can cast one of them. You pick either half to cast. So that is, you pick one door to unlock, and the abilities of that half apply. If it has an ability that triggers when you unlock this door, it'll just trigger when the room enters. If it has other triggered abilities, those will trigger as appropriate. Static abilities of that half apply, and so on. And then you ignore everything about the half you didn't cast for now. That door is still locked, but you can unlock the other room by paying its cost anytime you could cast a sorcery.
First of all, how is this mechanic not in Murders at Karlov Manor? Just Lord Tupperware in the kitchen with the knife. Or
Well,
maybe it was where this mechanic was born, and they just didn't have room to fit it in there.
I was just thinking, as Innistrad is a fan favorite, and I felt like Murders at Karlov Manor is my favorite set of 2024. Not particularly close, and that Duskmourn is looking good. I was like, man, Magic really feels like they know how to do the horror genre well.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to take a look at one of these rooms. The options are Glassworks or Shattered Yard. So Glassworks is 2 and a red for an enchantment room. When you unlock this door, this room deals 4 damage to a creature an opponent controls. Presumably that is the half you're casting first most of the time, unless you don't
Hmm.
have a good target for it. The other half is Shattered Yard, which is 4 and a red. At the beginning of your end step, this room deals 1 damage to each opponent.
Yeah, that card's like that seems like a sort of bread and butter common removal spell with a little upside. And I'll be curious to see as we get into rooms. Like I feel like I'm trying to, in the spirit of your note to me a few episodes ago about letting me cook a little bit, trying to think more optimistically during preview season. There's a theme in the set of unlocking rooms. There's a mechanic we'll get to in a second, or we can get to it now, called Eerie, which is an ability that triggers whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room. And I am so far pretty dubious about how often rooms are going to be unlocked. Though I guess is just casting a room is unlocking the door as well. But that doesn't matter because that's already casting an enchantment anyway. So
Correct.
it's just, are you dumping mana to unlock the other half of the door or other half of the room, rather? I'm just like, how often is that happening? Because it feels like the cards we've seen so far, like the one you just read, it's very clear which half you're interested in.
Yes, but I mean, blue red as an archetype is going to care about rooms. So I presume in blue
Blue
red,
red
you are
as an
going to be
archetype
unlocking as many doors as possible.
Blue red as an archetype has lost major points in 2024. So there's no reason to think it can't continue to do so with room unlocking in this format.
I hear that, but I think if you're asking the question, I think
Yeah.
most of the other archetypes probably are going to have one. Most of the rooms are that way. There are a couple that like work well with each other too, which we'll get to, which are nice. But I think ultimately it's all upside. It's like kicker, right? It's like a new way to have an expensive kicker on a card. Everything's kicker. So we should shout out our Eerie card here and not get too tunneled on rooms. Our Eerie card is Dashing Bloodsucker, which is 3 and a black for an uncommon. It's a 2/5 vampire warrior. And the Eerie text is whenever enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, Dashing Bloodsucker gets +2/+0 and gains lifelink until end of turn.
Okay, so I already want to get into it in the idea of focusing on cards that we have questions about. What are your thoughts on this card? This doesn't feel like it's pulling me into a color, but it also feels like one eerie trigger on this, like a 4/5 lifelink is huge.
Yeah, I think this is going to be largely a 1
And only
plus in blue
going
black.
in blue
Only
black.
going in blue black, Eerie control.
Yeah.
But if you hit, I mean, and if you build your deck such that, blue black is the prescribed deck that it's going to be going into. But if you
Hmm.
have a black red deck that's got a bunch of enchantments because there are all these creatures that are called fears running around and stuff that
Hmm.
cares about delirium, enchantments are going to be running around everywhere in the set. If you get in one attack with this as a 4/5 lifelinker, you're quite happy, right? A 4-mana 4/5
Yeah.
lifelinker on curve is huge.
It's huge. Yeah. I mean, it'll never block on curve that way, but yeah, the fact that it could attack the following turn that way is pretty strong. Okay. See, the numbers are working for me. I gotta say, they're still working for me. Okay, we gotta talk about Manifest Dread.
What a mechanic. Okay, so
Yeah.
Manifest Dread, when you're instructed to Manifest Dread, you look at the top 2 cards of your library, you manifest one of them, which is putting it face down onto the battlefield, and it has a 2/2. It's essentially morph, but not morph. It's
It's
cards that are,
disguise
yeah,
for
it's
people
just.
who are from this
Yeah,
year.
for the Zoomers, it's disguise. But anyway, you manifest, you turn it into a 2/2, and if it happens to be a creature, you can pay its mana cost and turn it face up. So there aren't things with morph costs or disguise cost or things like that. It'll just be whether or not you hit an actual factual creature when you manifest dread. But you also could just hit a land or whatever and manifest it as a 2/2 and then just never flip it up. But your opponent's always going to be wondering, well, do they have a 6/6 under there? Am I going to die when they attack with this thing? The mind games are really fun
Well,
with the
because the
face
other
down
card
cards.
goes down to the graveyard. So your opponents gets to see, like, well, you didn't pick that.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Which is interesting.
The mechanic is very flavorfully named. It is
Ye-
going to manifest dread in the
yes,
opponent. It's very cool.
exactly.
Um, so yeah, you choose one, and that one goes face down as a 2/2 on your side of the battlefield. The other one goes into your graveyard, which is also just huge upside in this format.
Hmm.
And then it's a colorless 2/2 with no name, no creature type, no abilities, no mana cost, and essentially mana value 0 then. And if it's a creature, you can turn it face up at any time without using the stack by paying its mana cost.
Yeah, that's a special action, so like you can't respond to it. So for example, we have Twist Reality, which is 1 blue for an instant at common. You choose one counter target spell or manifest dread. And we'll be chatting about Manifest Dread stuff a little later on because that's one of that's blue green's whole deal. And the signposts are pretty sweet.
Well, also, it's just if we're talking about what matters, this is going to be the mechanic that matters. This mechanic is insanely powerful.
That's what I think too. This mechanic seems excellent to me. I mean that like, but like if it all like rooms and Eerie could also really matter. Like rooms is a whole new kind of card, but like I'm with you so far. But I don't know if that's just like because I can more easily understand Manifest Dread because it's close to something we've played with.
Possible, but think about Decayed, for example, like being tacked onto stuff. And Manifest Dread isn't necessarily going to be tacked onto some stuff, although it has been slapped onto some cards that look insanely powerful. We'll get to our Lords of Limited preview card here later in the episode, which is just absolutely busted. But
Mm-hmm.
this is infinitely better than Decayed. Think about how much Decayed ran the set where Blue Black was OP that you didn't like that I liked. Not Crimson Vow. It came before Crimson Vow. What was it called?
Yeah, Midnight Hunt. Yeah,
Midnight
but
Hunt.
like,
Thank you.
this comparison is kind of strange to me because like you were just getting extra, like you were sort of getting tutus attached, like tutu zombies that couldn't block and would die after you attacked with them, attached to other effects. That's not really happening here with manifesting.
I mean, there are a few cards that are that way that are going to be really broken, but something like this, like Twist Reality, is a hard card for me to evaluate, like how good it is. My gut says that it is fine.
Yeah, my
Like,
gut says
like,
this is a 0, that this won't particularly matter, but like but not bad. Again, like you'll play it.
but if it's yeah,
Yeah,
it's either going to be a 0 or like a 4.
that seems so hard for me to imagine because like neither half of this card is particularly good. 3 mana counter a spell, whatever. 3 mana flash 2/2 card in your bin, whatever. That's also fine. Like neither half is very good.
Yeah, you're right. It's probably a 0. Manifest Dread as a mechanic, A plus, baby.
A plus, exactly. I can definitely get on board with that. Next up, we have Survival, which is an ability. Each survival ability is a triggered ability that triggers at the beginning of your second main phase if the creature with the ability is tapped. And it, again, checks on trigger and on resolution. So if something were to happen, like, you know, your creature's tapped and it's like, oh, hey, we want to resolve this survival thing. And then for somehow it becomes untapped, then it wouldn't happen. I'm not sure that's going to come up that much. But survival seems like a sweet mechanic. For as an example card, we have Savior of the Small. What's going on there?
This is 3 and a white for an uncommon 3/4 core survivor, and it's got survival at the beginning of your second main phase. If Savior of the Small is tapped, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to your hand.
So, like, flavorfully, if it's survived combat, right? If it has attacked and it's tapped in your second main phase, it's survived and then you get something. But then we'll want to be looking, as we will in a little bit, looking for other ways, perhaps, to tap creatures and have them tapped at the beginning of your second main phase.
Yes.
And the last new mechanic is Impending, which is really just on a cycle of mythics, right?
Yeah, so Impending is only on a cycle of mythics. It's an alternative cost. It's essentially kind of like a revamped Suspend. So if you choose to cast this spell for its impending cost, it will enter with a number of time counters on it. As long as it has at least one time counter on it, it isn't a creature. So for example, we've got Overlord of the Mistmoors here, which is 5 white for a 6/6 mythic avatar hoarder. And it's got Impending 4 for 2 white. And if you cast the spell for its impending cost, it enters with 4 time counters on it, and it isn't a creature until the last counter is removed. At the beginning of your end step, you remove a time counter from it. So whenever it enters or attacks, create 2/2/1 flying insect creature tokens. So you can pay this for 4 mana, get your 2/2/1s up front, and wait 4 turns for the 6/6. Or if you pay the whole 7 mana, you'll get the 6/6 plus the 2/2/1 flyers right at the same time.
Yeah, notably, just because in my head I had shortcutted it to be Suspend, and Suspend happens at the beginning of your upkeep. That's when that happens. But this triggers in your end step. So at the end of like the 4th turn after you impend this, you can block with it, which is worth noting, right? That it doesn't have to wait until your upkeep. But yeah,
Correct.
this
It
is
also
not
solves the weird like haste things with Suspend, like coming
right.
off. Like it just makes it much cleaner.
For sure. But yeah, I mean, this card looks busted. I haven't seen the full cycle, but I imagine they're all busted because they're all mythics. But we don't care about mythics. We care about Signpost Uncommons here on Lords of Limited. And we actually don't have all of them previewed, which is kind of nice. So we have a little bit of an incomplete puzzle this time around. But we have a lot to talk about. So first up is blue white, which is Eerie Tempo. So again, Eerie is that enchantment ETB or room ETB or unlocking rather mechanic matters. What's going on here?
We've got Inquisitive Glimmer, which is blue white for a 2/3, and says enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, or unlock costs you pay cost 1 less.
Okay, is that exciting?
I don't think so, but what is exciting is there are a lot of them that are aggressively costed like this. There's a lot of them that are 2 mana, that are just cheap. There's a lot of efficient, powerful looking cards in the format, and I'm excited to play a pretty powerful format.
It seems like they've mostly stuck with the solution they had from original Theros that then I think ran over to when we had Theros Beyond Death, which was that when Constellation was the enchantment matters mechanic in those sets. And in OG Theros, you had constellation cards that were enchantments themselves. So like cards that were enchantments that cared about enchantments entering, they largely split that in Theros Beyond Death. And I think that's largely split here too. But it's interesting to note that this is an enchantment creature that has some synergy there. But it's a lot of like the card we read that is Eerie, the 2/5 that can get +2/+0 and lifelink, that cares about enchantments but isn't
It is
itself an
not an
enchantment.
enchantment, yeah.
So there's a bit of like tension there. It's just a lot of like you're just gonna have to do a lot of thinking. I feel like when you're drafting and deck building to like make sure you're checking the column A and the column B stuff. I think it's also worth talking about this glimmer token type that's
Wait, do you
in the
mean you
format
mean there's
now.
more to Magic than taking all the cards that say squirrel on them? Is that
Well,
is that what you're telling me?
there might just be in this new format, um, which gives us a glimmer of hope with these glimmer tokens.
So this card is Glimmer Seeker. This is 2 and a white for an uncommon 3/3. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Glimmer Seeker is tapped, draw a card if you control a Glimmer creature. If you don't control a Glimmer creature, create a 1/1 white Glimmer enchantment creature token.
And there are cards that are like this that can't be blocked by glimmer tokens, or only gets to do something or can't or gets to do something if your opponent doesn't or does control glimmer, etc. But so that's something to be on the lookout for as well. Moving on to blue black, we have Eerie Control. First up is Fear of Infinity. It's 1 blue black for a 2/2 enchantment creature with flying, lifelink, and can't block. And it's Eerie Trigger, which is whenever an enchantment you control enters, or whenever you fully unlock a room, you may return Fear of Infinity from your graveyard to your hand.
This is a weird card. It's
I feel
like
like this card is great. It feels more like I mean it is an enchantment, but it feels more like an enchantment, right? Because it can't block. Like it's just
yeah, but so you're going to be gaining 2 life a turn and doing 2 damage, hopefully.
yeah,
I
it
mean,
seems
yeah,
great.
if this is what was that? What was that card? It's not Citadel Siege, was it? It was Palace Siege.
Yeah.
It
If
was
this
like a
is
3
drain
black
2
enchantment.
every turn, that then like your opponent tries to kill and then you just get it back.
Yeah, there's also maybe potentially cool crossover with the sacrifice stuff where you can sack
Hmm.
it, have play an enchantment, bring this back as looping sack fodder if there's time to dirtle around that much.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of coming around on this. So
Yeah.
what are you giving this a B minus? What is this getting from you?
No, this gets a 1. I don't think this is.
It's classic bait and switch. I love this card. Think it's awesome. 1.
Well, in the common parlance, this would get what, a C plus. So 1 just makes it sound like I'm not excited about it, but I am. I just think it's clearly only in one deck, but I don't think it's pulling me into that deck.
I don't think it's pulling you into the deck. Okay, cool. Next up, we've got Skull Snap Nuisance, which is blue-black for a 1/4 flyer, and it's got Eerie whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, surveil 1.
I mean, both these cards are just so control, right? You've got a high toughness blocker that gives you card selection the longer the game goes along. You've got, I mean, what is essentially like while you're just sort of holding the ground, this thing is your win condition, Fear of Infinity. It's very cool. So the signposts make me think like you're looking at me in a way. You got to type a look.
I do have, I am looking at you in a way. I mean, but they're both 1s, right? They're not
Yeah,
pulling you into this archetype, so I would expect this archetype to not be one of the premier archetypes based on looking at the cards that are the most juiced as multicolored uncommons. Because a lot of them looked pushed, and these look they're good, but they're not game swinging cards.
We got a lot to talk about. We don't need to get bogged down here, but I do like those cards. I also really am so excited for Red Black Sacrifice.
You know.
Yeah, I know it's so out of character for me, but it looks so good.
All right, first up in Red Black Sacrifice, we've got Disturbing Mirth, which is black red for an enchantment. When it enters, you can sacrifice another enchantment or creature. If you do, draw 2 cards. Whenever you sacrifice this, meaning Disturbing Mirth, you manifest dread.
Yeah, so I mean, you can kind of like chain this together, but a lot of all the sacrificey stuff is, usually we see like sack a creature or an artifact, but here it's creature or enchantment. So a lot of your sacrifice stuff will be able to sacrifice Disturbing Mirth, like Sawblade Skin Ripper, 1 black red for a 3/2 with Menace. Pay 2, sack another creature or enchantment, put a +1/+1 counter on Sawblade Skin Ripper. And at the beginning of your end step, if you sacrificed 1 or more permanents this turn, Sawblade Skin Ripper deals that much damage to any target. This I would give a letter grade to.
Over Disturbing Mirth?
Yeah. Disturbing Mirth feels like, whatever, feels like a 1. Sawblade Skin Ripper feels like, I don't know, B+. This card seems ridiculous to me.
I don't know about. Yeah, it depends on how many X ones there are running around. I mean, certainly letter grade. Yeah, I don't know about B minus B. You'd have to see the whole set to start to do that a little bit more. But just to put up red blacks uncommons against blue blacks, red blacks are better.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think Skin Ripper is better. I don't know about Disturbing Mirth.
Disturbing Mirth looks so good to me. It's so efficient. 2 mana keep the gas flowing that then turns into a creature. Once you do the thing, you've made a 2/2 plus drawn 2 cards for 2 mana.
Doing the thing meaning this has sacrificed something and then something has sacrificed this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. But like that's a lot of work. The blue-black cards ask much less work of you.
But the ceiling is also lower. But live.
Okay, I'm living. I was excited about it. I like red-black. Less excited here about survival.
Next up, we've got green-white survival, and first card up is Shrewd Storyteller, 1 green-white for a 3/3 human survivor. At the beginning of your second main phase, if this is tapped, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature.
And the other uncommon is Baseball Bat, green-white for an equipment. When it enters, attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever equipped creature attacks, tap up to 1 target creature, and it has an equip cost of 3.
I mean, a cool niche interaction with Baseball Bat also is that when your creature attacks, if it already has attacks free and clear, you can tap one of your own things to get 2 survival triggers out of the deal and potentially snowball from there. I mean, green-white looks like it is going to be very aggressive and want to beat down. And if you do that successfully, your deck's going to pop off. But green-white's also going to fall flat on the back foot. Or you're going to need ways to race or something. You're going to need like lifelink tricks or something along those lines to where you feel good about entering a race with the opponent that looks like a losing proposition. But I do kind of have higher hopes for green-white in the sense that after seeing how the red-black deck played out from Bloomborough, where it just like was able to force you to be on defense against it. Like if green-white has the tools to do that, similarly, I could see green-white panning out.
I feel like the way I want to frame this is that like these signposts / the mechanic of survival just makes me think like I want to evaluate the green-white cards just on their own merit generally, rather than like red-black and blue-black and maybe blue-white haven't seen enough yet. I'm like, ooh, I feel like there's some cooking to get done, some like ceilings to achieve. And I feel like green-white survival is going to be like, is this card like you're not? I feel like you're not as much caring about the survival text. Or maybe that's not true, but like Shrewd Storyteller does not excite me. Like if this has an attack and it just seems so like okay. Isn't that what every
it's very one-dimensional? I think that's what you're trying to say.
To have its creatures survive combat.
Yes, it's a very one-dimensional mechanic, but the thing that's going to determine how good it is what the rate is on those cards, which is what you're trying to say. Like if the rates are pushed and you get out ahead and you're beating down, green-white's going to be a very scary aggro deck to play against.
Yeah. All right,
but the cards don't get the brain juices flowing quite as much.
They do not. That's fair. Blue-red, as we said, is rooms. We haven't seen any gold-specific cards previewed for it, but we have seen a blue-red room, which is Smoky Lounge and Misty Salon. So Smoky Lounge is 2 red for an enchantment room. At the beginning of your first main phase, add red. Spend this mana only to cast room spells and unlock doors. And Misty Salon is 3 and a blue. When you unlock this door, create an XX blue spirit creature token with flying, where X is the number of unlocked doors among rooms you control. I mean, how? Like,
How?
is your deck just all rooms?
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Who needs to
Your deck
block?
your deck's just like 12 rooms, and you've got this. I mean, if your deck is 12 rooms and then you have like 2 free mana every turn to cast rooms and unlock rooms, and then you're making a big flying spirit, like if we're talking about me trying to live and think about the ceiling, that's like that sounds really cool and powerful. But is that going to happen?
Well, I am a lot more optimistic about it. I didn't realize that Glassworks, the room we previewed when we talked about the room mechanic, was a common.
It's a
So the
common,
fact
yeah.
that rooms get a 2 and a red common deal for, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's a good rate. And then
Aren't
if you're
other aren't other decks gonna just be like, I'll take a 3 mana deal for?
maybe, but what if they don't want it? You know, what if there's a better red removal spell where that's not the premium red common and blue red's
Uh-huh.
kind of a niche archetype or whatever, and you get just imagine
Okay.
multiple smoky lounges, 4 mana a turn. Like, because once you get it going, the chain's gonna get better and better. So
Yeah.
then you smoky lounge, and then maybe you play the next turn to catch up. You play another smoky lounge plus your removal spell room
And
on
you're
4 mana
dead.
because you'll have
and you
6 mana.
and you've
You're
asked your
dead.
opponent, just wait, just give me one turn. Give me
No,
one
no,
more
no,
turn.
no, 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 no. Listen, this is real. Smoky Lounge for 3 mana, right? On turn 3. You've played a
Okay.
2 drop. You run your Smoky Lounge out on 3. Turn 4, you have 6 mana. So you play
Uh-huh.
another Smoky Lounge plus the deal 4 removal spell. And you're stable. And then you have so much mana, you're just steamrolling away with the game.
Yeah, okay. I mean, and like
Building a mansion.
there's gonna be like, I mean, maybe not at common. I feel like there's gonna be a blue room that's like 5 mana draw 3 is gonna be one of the modes, right? And so like then that just like keeps the gas flowing. You're using the mana from the Smoky Lounge. Okay, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it.
And once you Smoky Lounge, you're only paying 2 mana for the other side of the room, which at worst is a 2/2 flyer. But once you maybe make it a 3/3 flyer, 4/4
No,
flyer, that's going to be much better later game. But rooms
well,
rooms are going to snowball. Rooms are definitely a
yes.
late game. It's kind of like caves or something from LCI. Like it's gonna
Mhm.
you can get to the late game and you can spend all the mana and not die. It's gonna do some really obscene stuff. It looks like whether or not you can do that is another thing.
Okay, I'm sold. I'm sold.
Next, we've got black green, which is Delirium Grind, and we've just got a clean cut removal spell here, which is Drag to the Roots. 2 black green for an uncommon. It says destroy target non land permanent, and if you have Delirium, it costs 2 less to cast.
And have we said what delirium is?
We have not, but I just assume everyone has played Magic for 30 years like me. So
Uh-huh.
Delirium is needing 4 or more different types among cards in your graveyard. So among creature, land, instant, sorcery, artifact, enchantment, planeswalker, etc., you need 4 unique types. And there are a lot of pushed ways to get to Delirium quickly in this format, it looks like.
Red green also cares about delirium, but in the stompy variety, the card we have here is Wildfire Wickerfolk. Red green for a 3/2 artifact creature with haste. So it itself will count for 2 types. And it has delirium. It gets +1/+1. It has trample as long as you have 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. Card seems like a banger.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to hit hard. I think
Yeah.
of all the ones we've talked about, this is the one of the ones, again, I'm least excited about.
Like one of the cards or the decks you're least excited about?
One of the cards. Maybe I'm underrating haste on it. I just feel like it's going to trade, but if it trades, then you're getting delirium much easier
Yeah,
because it's an
that's why I
artifact.
like
Also,
it.
it's giving you a unique type.
It's giving you two, and
Uh,
it's giving you 2 types.
yeah, but you're always going to get creature pretty easily. I mean,
I think
the
this
hard
card's.
ones are going to be artifact and land.
Mhm.
I'm suspect of an aggressive deck that needs 4 or more card types in the graveyard as a premise.
I think that's a fair suspicion to have. Can I interest you in on burial rights?
Oh, baby, can you? So black white is Reanimator, and the card that's been previewed so far is very powerful. It's Right of the Moth, 1 white, black, black. They wanted to make sure no other decks could cast this card. It's an uncommon sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. And it's got flashback for 3 white, white, black. So you can cast it a second time. Or, heaven forbid, you manifest dread this into the graveyard. Oh my god, manifest dread is so broken.
Yeah, and like Abzan, Manifest Dread, Delirium decks just seem like num 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 num. Red white is aggro. That is the name it's been given. It seems it seems as from other cards we've seen that it specifically cares about power 2 or less mattering, but we actually haven't seen either of the uncommon signposts previewed yet. Which takes us on to blue green Manifest Dread.
Shout out to blue green. Both of these cards are incredible. So the
Yeah.
first one is Growing Dread. This is green blue for an enchantment with flash. Whenever it enters, you manifest dread. Whenever you turn a permanent face up, you put a +1/+1 counter on it.
And Oblivious Bookworm, one of our preview cards, is green blue for a 2/3 human wizard. At the beginning of your end step, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card, unless a permanent entered the battlefield face down under your control this turn, or you turned a permanent face up this turn. So you just get a free loot in your end step
For doing nothing.
for doing nothing. And then you just get to draw a card if you've manifested dread or flipped up a manifested card. Both of these are nuts.
Well, Bookworm is much better than Growing Dread. Like, if we're
Yes.
trying to be particular about which cards are good, which I am going to try harder to do this format, Bookworm is much better than Growing Dread. And I think Bookworm is the most powerful card we've seen so far among all of these gold cards. Not particularly close. Like, Bookworm looks A minus ish to me.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
it's very good. And it's going to be playing with the best mechanic, or what I would expect to be the best mechanic.
Yeah, for sure.
Some sweet gold uncommons. And I think the other thing that's very exciting to me about this format is that a lot of them are powerful, and a lot of them are cards you're going to get late if you're in the right archetype. Like, they are fairly self-contained, but also, like, at the same time of being self-contained, kind of are open-ended as far as how to use them or maximize them in deck building. They are synergy cards at their core,
Well,
a lot of them.
and while there is clear delineations of what the archetypes are doing, there is so far quite a bit of fixing previewed, and there is quite a bit of bleed. Like I was just noticing, I was like, oh, Growing Dread, the enchantment that we just read that manifests dread, that's an enchantment. So that will trigger Eerie. And so maybe you end up doing a Sultai Eerie control manifest thing, or a Bant Eerie tempo manifest dread, or like there's Delirium, and that obviously plays well with Manifest Dread because it gives you a way to put something into the bin. And enchantments play well with Delirium because that's a rare type to get in. Like there's just a lot of cooking that I'm already seeing that you can have with some overlap with these archetypes.
Right. And if you just look at the blue archetypes, like, blue looks like it's going to want to do a lot of stuff with enchantments. So there's blue white Eerie tempo, blue black Eerie control. We've seen a lot of the blue green cards that are enchantments. There's going to be some overlap there as well. And in blue red, rooms are themselves enchantments. So
Mhm.
blue is almost certainly going to want to do some sweet stuff with enchantments, and then a lot of room for you to figure out which one of those you want to focus in on and how to pull from the other archetypes, as it were.
Yeah. All right. So, in an effort to again focus on cards that we either just want to shout out as we think are premium, or cards that we want to ask each other about, let's chat about some commons that we think are really going to matter. Looking at that idea of like what do we think those top 10 commons are? Those four pluses, or perhaps B minuses or Bs in the format. First up for me, Fanatic of the Harrowing. It's 3 and a black for a 2/2. When it enters, each player discards a card. If you discarded a card this way, draw a card.
There's a lot of cool stuff happening here. I'm a little worried about the base rate for a
Mm-hmm.
2/2.
That you think 4 mana 2/2. So basically, this is 4 mana 2/2. Your opponent discards a card and you loot. You rummage.
Yes, but, like, that's not good enough. I don't
You
think.
don't think
Maybe
so?
maybe it is. I really want this to be in a reanimator deck. Like, I think this is going to
Uh
be like
huh.
a 2 or something. Like, if your deck cares about the graveyard, you're going to want to play this card. Otherwise, like, this is not pulling me into black, I don't think.
So you think you need every piece of this buffalo to matter. You also need the card going to the graveyard to matter either in a reanimator or a delirium sense.
Correct.
Okay, I'm
If you
into it.
do all of that, though, you're probably playing it. But even then, 4 mana 2/2 is tough, I think, because, like, what you're left behind with is not particularly relevant at that point in the game.
That's true, but like I don't know. Yeah. Okay. All right. So maybe this isn't one that matters. Good. Glad we talked about it.
It might. I don't know. It's tough without having seen all the rest of the commons. Next
Mhm.
up, we've got Say Its Name. This is the card that has been, I think, discussed the most in the Lords of Limited Discord.
Yeah.
It has been acronymed down to Sin. One and a
Mm.
green for a common sorcery. Mill 3 cards, then you may return a creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. Exile this card and 2 other cards named Say Its Name from your graveyard. Search your graveyard, hand, and or library for card named Altanact, the thrice called, and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle, activate only as a sorcery.
We have a category coming up called Premium Uncommons, where Altanak is listed, so we might as well read that. That's Altanak, the thrice called 5 GG for a 9/9 trample. When it becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, draw a card, and you can pay 1 and a green to discard it. Return target land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Okay, so there's been a lot of chatter about Say Its Name, Ben. What are your thoughts?
Good, not great. C plus. Got him.
It's so tempting, right? I mean, it's definitely a four plus. I could see this being B minus territory in this format. So
No,
the
this is not a 4 plus. You're never playing this in green white survival.
well, I'm never
You're
playing
playing it.
green
You're
white
playing it in.
survival, so 3 plus, fine.
So you're playing it in black green. You're playing it in red green. I don't know if you're playing it in blue green manifest dread.
So here's the thing about this card is like I feel like we've been used to now that we're on the heels of Malevolent Rumble and Cash Grab. You can only pick in those cards. You can only get a card from among the milled cards, right? This
Correct.
is not that. This
Correct.
lets you, this is grapple with the past for the old schoolers, right? This is
Yes.
mill 3 and then just get something from your yard, right? We should also shout out that Terramorphic Expanse is in the set. So that's a fetch land that will play nicely with this, right? So even if if you're just, Terramorphic Expanse on 1, crack it, find a land, and then say its name on 2, you can always get that land back if you want to, whatever. Not that that's incredible, but it's an option. I think this is like, and just late in the game, this being, you know, get back your bomb or whatever, and plus Turbo Delirium. I don't know. This card seems pretty darn excellent to me. And then
This
the catch 'em all potential is, I mean, very appealing.
Yeah, if you get an Altanac, for sure. This is likely to be a high pick. Yeah, it's going to be as good as Black Green is as an
But
archetype, I think.
also red green.
Delirium Stompy, it's so tough to want to play. It's a card called Say Its Name that's a 1G sorcery card selection card. I mean, I guess you will if that's what you got to turn it on. You're left with 3 cards after you cast this in the graveyard. I mean, I think this is going to be insane in black green, and I think it will be fine in red green.
Elsewhere,
And yeah, I would say like B
one
minus
plus.
in black green. Like it's probably going
Yeah.
to pull you into black green.
It would be hard to imagine me cut it. Maybe you do cut it from green white decks. I don't know, but like it would be hard to imagine that happening just because again it does the thing, it does so many things that we were talking about cheap cards doing a couple episodes ago. Like it in your opener, like do you need to hit your third land drop? Great. Do you need to find gas? Great. Does it provide synergy? Great. Like it's doing a lot for just 2 mana.
It's doing a lot for 2 mana. All right, you sold me. I'm sold.
Okay. Say its name, I think, is a common that's really going to matter. I don't know about this next one, though.
Tunnel Surveyor, 2 and a blue for a 2/2 when it ETBs create a 1/1 white glimmer enchantment creature token. This has to matter. This card is just insane rate and synergy.
Insane rate? We get 3 mana 6/6s these days, like it's not an insane rate. It's a
No,
fine
but
rate.
this is good. Two
Yeah.
rectangles. You're gonna have some stuff to sacrifice. It's gonna trigger all your eerie things.
Yeah. Okay. I was just wondering because I was like, obviously, if this was a flyer, like we've seen enough of those that we know, but the glimmer token doesn't fly. But I think it's probably still one to watch out for.
It will be one of the best blue commons.
I would assume so. We got a functional reprint here. Wary Watchdog, 1 and a green, 3/1. When it enters or dies, surveil 1. In March of the Machines, we had a Wary Thespian. It was the same, 1 and a green, 3/1. When it entered or died, you surveilled 1. Again, doing the thing, like giving you a little bit of card selection on the cheap. I think this is going to be one of Green's top commons.
Really? I think I would give this a 1 plus. Like, it's gonna be
No
very good in red.
way. This
It's
is a
gonna be very
4. You're playing this in every green deck. You're out of your mind.
out of my mind, huh? And this is
What
gonna be
why
great
why
in red
wouldn't you
green.
want this in a
It's gonna
green
be
deck?
great in red green stompy. You'll play it in black green, and you're not gonna care about it in blue green or green white.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. That's
All
all I
right,
have to
folks.
say.
Folks, clearly the number system is not going to ruin the crash course. Don't you worry. The arguments will be a flowing. I think that was the biggest piece of feedback we received was no matter what you do, please don't stop arguing.
Well, yeah. You can lead a horse to a new grading system, but you can't make him stop arguing. I just don't know what to tell you. I can't believe you don't think this card is good.
I
That is
do. I
wild
think
to
he's
me.
good in exactly one deck and pretty good in another. And you aren't going to. I think it's a 0 in blue, green, or green, white. You'll play it, but it doesn't matter there.
Of course it matters. It's giving you card selection attached to a 2-mana 3/1, which is a relevant body.
Nah. Say its name
Okay.
is.
Cool. Cool.
Oh no.
I feel I must do what this next card is telling me to do, which is give in to violence. 1 on a black instant, target creature gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink until end of turn. Am I overcorrecting for
That's what I
Scales of
think.
Shale?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say this is a 0.
Is this a 0?
What archetype tells you it wants this card?
Well, that's a next level thing. I hadn't gotten that far yet. I was just thinking about the card. It said lifelink, and I learned that lifelink was good, but not this.
But I think the thing about Scales of Shale was it also did double duty against removal, which this
Yeah.
does against some types, but not others.
Right.
You're not guaranteed to win combat the way you were with Scales of Shale. Scales of Shale could cost 1 mana. This is significantly worse than Scales of Shale, I think.
Okay, I buy it.
Next up is Anthropede. I love this card. This is 3 and a green for a 3/4 common insect with reach. Whenever it enters, you can discard a card or pay 2. When you do, destroy target room.
See, I have the stink face now about this card.
What?
What is this like
This is a 3/4 reach Flame Tongue Kavu.
against one deck?
I guess what? I guess one
Like
deck, sure.
flame, and also
I mean,
it's not flame tongue Kavu. They already got whatever the first room did for them.
okay.
I don't think this card is very good. I'm not sold.
I'm also not sold. All right, I take it back.
Unsettling Twins. I hadn't put this on the list. I'm glad you did. 3 and a white 2/2 human. When it enters, manifest dread. So, is this kind of card still good? Like the 4 mana 2/2/2s?
Yes, if I feel confident about anything in this previews episode, it is that Manifest Dread is going to be nuts, and cards that are reasonable that let you Manifest Dread are going to be very good. I would be shocked if Unsettling Twins did not pan out to be a good card.
And it's because of the selection and because you think like, well, what you're getting is more than a 2/2 if you're putting a creature under it.
Right, 4 mana 2/2/2s is fine. Plus, if you're getting a creature, it's good. Plus, potentially you're dumping something into your bin that's going to give you value for your Reanimator deck. Like, Manifest Dread just gives you so much optionality.
Selection again, yeah, optionality. I am surprised I had to put this card on the list.
Oh, to be fair, I added to the show notes before I had seen Glimmerburst.
Oh, okay.
So I had not seen that yet. So the next card is Glimmerburst, 3 and a blue for an instant. Draw 2 cards, create a 1/1 white glimmer enchantment creature token. Who, baby, this card is good.
Yeah, I do think this is going to be one of Blue's top commons.
Well, not just Blue's top commons. This is likely to be one of the better commons overall, unless it's just too slow, I guess. I mean, if the
Would you like to make a bet right now about Wary Watchdog versus Glimmerburst on the 17 lands power rankings?
Oh, I would love to. I would take that bet so fast. What are we betting?
All right, well, we'll have to figure out the terms offline, I suppose, and then get back to you.
Report back in the crash course?
Yeah, we'll report back. We'll figure it out. Premium uncommons, focusing on cards that matter. How is this a real card? Razorkin Horde Master.
Aomer's back.
Yeah, what the heck?
4 red for an uncommon 4/4 haste. Whenever you attack, create a 1/1 red gremlin creature token.
And it's not attacking, so you just get it.
You just get it. You get a block with it.
Yeah,
I mean, this not having 5 power is a fair deal weaker than Aomer.
Sure.
but it's very good.
I put the other two on this list. I'm curious to see what your thoughts. Fear of Falling. It's 3 blue blue for a 4/4 enchantment creature with flying. And when it attacks, target creature defending player controls gets -2/-2 and loses flying until your next turn.
Air elemental with upside. I mean,
That card
it's
seems like a
good.
beating to me. Yeah.
Yeah, premium at 5 mana. I don't know.
5 mana 4/4 flyer has good types. Does a pretty powerful thing when it attacks. I think this is going to be really oppressive.
Yeah, because it pushes itself through.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in. This card's good.
Yeah. And then our other Lords of Limited preview card. Oh boy.
We had 2 juiced cards this time around. This is Under
Yeah.
the Skin, 2 and a green for an uncommon sorcery, Manifest Dread. You may return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. Also, note that you get a Manifest Dread before
Yes.
returning a permanent card, and you don't have to target. So you get to potentially pick up the thing that you Manifest Dread into the graveyard with.
On curve, this is 3 mana 2/2 draw a card.
Yes.
Like unless you are the most unluckiest person and you flip up an instant and a sorcery, then you're just getting a 3 mana 2/2. But
In which
like
case you built your deck wrong.
right. But otherwise on curve this is 3 mana 2/2 draw a card. And like again, you get to put a creature under it and then hit your 4th land drop because you're going to put the land that you've been into your hand. Amazing. Later in the game, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, this is absurd. Again, it's going to be one of the best uncommons in the set, like
That's what I think.
pushing B plus territory.
Yeah. All right. As if we haven't argued enough, let's get into great or garbage, which is really we might have to just retire the segment if we're rethinking about how we're approaching this episode. The first common on this list, I am curious to hear your thoughts about. Piranha Fly is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 with flying, and it enters tapped.
This is garbage.
Is this?
And the rules of the game are you have to choose great or garbage. I think we should also allow a number this time around for some nuance if we're trying to give actual good information.
Okay.
In the previews episode.
Because this card is either a 4 or a 0.
This is a 0.
That's wild to me.
That's because you were playing Magic when this would have been a great card. But
yeah,
where does it go? It doesn't go. Maybe it goes in Blue White Eerie Tempo, but it's not an enchantment.
Mm-hmm.
Blue, it definitely doesn't go in Blue Black Eerie Control. Definitely doesn't go in Blue Red Rooms, and it definitely doesn't go in Blue Green Manifest Dread. This card is homeless.
Okay. It's a 0. It's garbage. I think I agree.
Next is Threats Around Every Corner. 3 and a green for an enchantment. When it ETBs, Manifest Dread. Whenever a face-down permanent you control enters, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. This card is broken.
Yeah, this card is great. I'm no longer will I come in and be like, I don't know, 4 mana 2/2 that gets you a land. Like by that time, who cares? Like, no, this card is awesome. This feels like a real reason to draft. I mean, ideally blue-green, but I think you could do like Sultai, Soup, Manifest Dread stuff. Like this card just reads like build around, cooking, powerful kind of card.
Yeah, this is build around B plus, build around A minus. Because it does the Roost of Drakes thing where it does it itself and then is going to give you continued bonuses. Like you don't have to take a turn off the turn you play Threats Around Every Corner. You do a great thing the turn it comes down, and then continue doing great things afterwards.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're kind of getting for the Khans of Tarkir lovers, we're kind of getting Trail of Mystery, and like this is kind of Trail of Mystery, and then the uncommon is kind of like what's it called?
Secret Plans.
Yeah, it's kind of like Secret Plans, the Growing Dread. It's kind of like Secret Plans, like growing your creatures when you flip them up.
Next up, we've got Attack in the Box. This is 3 mana for a 2/4 artifact creature. It's a toy. And whenever Attack in the Box attacks, you may have it get +4/+0 until end of turn. If you do, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step.
What is this card? Is this just garbage?
It's very flavorful.
It does seem pretty sweet in red-black. Like
how so?
Well, because
you get in a big chunk of damage and then sacrifice it anyway because you were planning to sacrifice something?
Right. Or it's a free, like you stack your triggers. Like you've got the Sawblade Skin Ripper, for example, that cares in your end step about how many permanents you've sacrificed. You can stack the triggers so that you sack Attack in the Box first, and then Sawblade Skin Ripper sees that you sacrifice that for free. Like you don't have to put any mana into it, and then that'll tack on with being able to deal damage. I don't know. I feel like it can do some stuff like 3 mana 2/4, and then it attacks as a 6/4 if you want it to that one time, which either means you're chunking in for 6 or, you know,
Plus, it's an artifact creature for Delirium for red green that can
right.
put itself in the graveyard, like get in a big chunk of damage and put itself in the graveyard.
All told, like, I'm again playing by the rules of the game. My inclination is to say garbage, but the card gives me enough pause that I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, I agree. Garbage, but you might go dumpster diving for it.
That's great, great podcasting right there.
Next up, we've got Flood Pit's Drowner, which is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Flash Vigilance Uncommon Merfolk. And whenever it enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. And you can pay 1 and a blue and tap this card and shuffle Flood Pit's Drowner and target creature with a stun counter on it into their owner's libraries.
Okay, so my buddy J-Maz messaged me about this card. He was like, "What is this? The card is broken." And in classic Ethan fashion, I was like,
Is
what?
it? Yeah,
Is it? Is
it's
it?
fine.
But one thing that because what I was thinking, I was like, well, whatever. This is Frost Links, and like for 2 mana, sure, but it's a 2 mana 2/1. Like tap a thing, keep it tapped, and then if you want it to be, it's a 4 mana removal spell in installments. The thing that I didn't think about is that you potentially, because it has flash, you get to you get to keep something from your opponent has from attacking for 2 turns, which is pretty big game because you flash it in on their turn, stun it. It's not attacking that turn, and then it's not attacking the next turn either, which is a big tempo swing. Like obviously this card is good. Like this card is not garbage. This card is great. But how great? Like is this top 10 uncommons in the set? Great? Is this like
I
B plus level great?
I don't think so. This seems like a 4 to me. Because
That was my
the
gut
format looks
too.
like a high synergy format, and this card is not synergistic. Like all the blue decks seem to care about enchantments, and this does
But
not play in that space.
synergy decks also just care about
Right, this is a fine card. Yeah,
raw
yeah,
card quality, which this has. Which
yeah.
is
So you're
why
never
it's a
cutting it. Yeah,
4
yeah.
plus,
That's why it's a
whatever.
4. Yeah.
Yeah. So great, I would say. Scrabbling Skullcrab is next. Single blue for an 0/3 crab skeleton and uncommon with Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, target player mills 2 cards. It's
It's
got to
got
be
to be
great,
great.
right?
It's
Oh,
got
it's
to be
got to be
great.
great. Yes, I
It's
think
got
so too. Like,
Yeah, because it's also going to have the flexibility to, if you are doing sweet stuff, you can mill yourself to turn on your
mhm.
own delirium. It's got enough toughness to block. You're going to be able to get multiples. Enchantments are running around everywhere. This card
There's
looks like the real deal to me.
I can't. There has to be, if there is a like whatever a way to stack your like bottom cards from your graveyard to your library in this format.
It's all
I'm
over.
all it's all over for me, me and my
Win
gems.
rate's plummeting. Yeah. But I do think Scrabbling Skullcrab gets there. This is probably a 1. Like, if we're being realistic.
Right, but not necessarily. I think that's another nuance to add to the numbers potentially is that like the number 1 doesn't necessarily have to mean
An archetype.
a
It is
single
this
color
card. This card
pair.
creates an archetype. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Right. I
It's
think
like a
that's
build
true.
around one.
Yeah. Reprint. Pyroclasm is back. 1 and a red for a sorcery. Deal 2 damage to each creature.
Is tilt inducing a grade that we
A
can give a
grade you
card?
can give.
I'm gonna be in on Manifest Red, and I'm gonna get main deck Pyroclasm. I'm gonna be so salty.
Yeah, that will be the question about this card, right? Is it main deckable? And I think it will be based on depending on how you are building your deck, right? In this sort of in the blue red rooms control deck you outlined, Pyroclasm seems excellent there as a thing
Yeah,
to do early in the game.
but
So
it is not great nor garbage. It will go in one deck like that.
mhm. Yeah, for sure. It will be deck building specific.
Next up, we've got Fear of Immobility. This is 4 and a white for a 4/4 common. When it enters, tap up to 1 target creature. If an opponent controls that creature, put a stun counter on it. So a little bit of flexibility there where you can tap your survival
Hmm.
things if you want to get a survival trigger when this ETBs. 5 mana? It's tough.
There was a string of like these 5 mana like curve topper tap things tempo cards where I was like just trying to be like this has to be great. This card is garbage, right?
I think it's a 1. Probably is more
Oh,
the truth.
I feel like it's a 0. I don't think it's like a 0 in that. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's gonna matter. Like I think you're never gonna end a draft and be like, wish I had a fear of immobility.
Except it looks to slot in well to like Eerie Tempo. Presumably it belongs there, right? Because it's an enchantment that's just going to give you tempo.
Look, Sky Skipper Duo was a 0, the 5 mana 3/3 flyer in blue. But like you played that in Frogs, you played that in random blue black decks. It's just, hey, it's a 3/3 flyer, get some value. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I don't think it matters.
Sure, what I'm saying is I do think this is better than Sky Skipper Duo. That's what I'm
Really?
saying. I do think
Okay.
this matters.
Okay.
I
All
mean,
right.
not like matters in the sense that it's going to be one of the top 10 commons in the set, but that I think it will be a good card at common in the 5 mana value slot in decks that want to push damage. I think
Okay.
you will miss this in aggressive decks.
Interesting. You just don't think you'll have other things to do at 5 mana that will be impactful to the game, or that this is uniquely impactful?
I think that this is uniquely impactful at common.
Okay.
Like
All right.
think about the Frostburg whatever.
Oh,
The
the
4/4 that did
giant.
this. 4/4 is big. Like for this effect to be on a 4/4,
Yeah, and I
4/4 is
guess you
pretty
had to.
large. And
You had to
it's an enchantment. Like it's gonna have some synergy stuff going on with it too.
yeah, you're talking about the Strider from Kaldheim, right? The
Yes.
giant.
Berg
Yeah.
Strider, maybe.
Yeah, and you had to work for that a little bit, right? Because you needed snow mana when you cast it, which was not a lot, but you did have to do it. All right, we'll be on lookout. That's a good comp. I hadn't thought about that. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this card. Trial of Anguish. Red for a sorcery. Choose 2 target creatures controlled by the same opponent. That player chooses one of them. Trial of Anguish deals 5 damage to that creature, and the other can't block this turn.
I mean, greater garbage, this card is great.
That's what I think too. Yeah, I think this card is great. I'm like, again, Longstalk Brawl taught me that 1 mana interaction is really good. And this, like, sure, this will kill, like, if they only have 2 things in play, you're just killing their worst thing. It's an edict. Like later in the game, you're killing their second largest thing, and then you also potentially enable attacks with this. That is a lot for 1 mana.
But it's a very specific type of card, right? Because normally we would hate a mutiny type card that was just
Correct.
like chooses 2 creatures, deals 5 to one of those 2 creatures, and it's the worst one that you're killing. We would hate that card, even if it were 1 mana. But the other can't block this turn is potentially enough of a damage push in an aggressive deck. I
Mm-hmm.
think this gets there.
Well, and that's a deck that is going to leverage a 1 mana removal spell the most as well.
Correct. Yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, ultimately this gets like a 1. And
One meaning
you're not picking it that highly. 1 meaning it goes in
aggro decks.
aggro decks. Yeah.
Yeah,
2.
I think that's
Maybe
true.
like red, green, and red, white. Maybe this gets a 2.
Yeah.
Vile Mutilator is up next. This is 5 black black for an uncommon 6/5 demon. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature or an enchantment. It's got flying and trample, and whenever it enters, each opponent sacrifices a non-token enchantment, then sacrifices a non-token creature.
This card is busted, right?
Yeah, this card is insanely good.
Like, is this top 10 uncommon insanely good? It could be, right? It could be.
It depends on which
So,
archetypes are the best.
well, so think about this. I feel like it can go in potentially all. I could see this singing in all of Black's decks. So Black White Reanimator is probably like its best home potentially because you could try and cheat it into play for cheaper than 7 mana.
Correct.
But like, and Black Green will probably have some bleed there as well. Blue Black Control, this is a great like you just get a win con like this at uncommon for your control decks. Red Black has sacrifice fodder. I mean obviously the sticking point here is 7 mana, but I don't know. This is such an impactful card.
Yeah, I really like this card. I think it is going to be a solid B. I don't know about top 10 uncommons in the set, but I think everything you're talking about, this existing at uncommon to be a tool for all those different types of decks is really important for the format.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Commune with Evil. It's 2 and a black for an uncommon sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Put one of them in your hand and the rest into your graveyard. You gain 3 life.
Wow. Okay, so you're cash grabbing, you're malevolent rumbling for 3 mana instead of 2. And what
And you
you
gain 3
get
life.
is 3 life. Black Green loves this. Like this is potentially turbo delirium.
Black white also
Black
theoretically
white
loves
theoretically
this.
loves this. Red black doesn't care about this, I would think. Blue black might like this. So like a 2 plus.
Two. I don't know about a two plus.
Seems pretty desirable in black green and black white
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, that it matters a lot in those two
in
archetypes.
those
Yeah, I
two
buy that.
decks.
Two plus. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
it.
All right, so I'd say great if it's a 2 plus. Next up is Cursed Windbreaker. Is Cryptic Coat back? 2 and a blue for an equipment. When it enters, you manifest Dread, then attach Cursed Windbreaker to that creature. Equipped creature has flying, and it has an equip cost of 3. So what you're getting is 3 mana, Windrake with a little bit of juice, right? Because of Manifest Dread. So like the thing that this is attached to, you might be able to flip up, and then it's larger. You're getting a little bit of something in the yard. This itself is types because it's an artifact. I would assume this is great.
Yeah, I also think this card is great. I really like this card. It's going to
Okay.
be an artifact that you can slot in if your deck cares about Delirium. There's a lot going on to like.
Fear of Burning Alive is 4 red red for a 4/4 enchantment creature. When it enters, it deals 4 damage to each opponent, and then has Delirium. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, if you have Delirium, Fear of Burning Alive deals that amount to target creature that player controls. So if you have Delirium when this enters, this is 6 mana 4/4, deal 4 to your opponent and 4 to a creature they control.
I mean, that's got me interested in red green Delirium.
You love 6 mana Flame Tongue Kavus. You
I
like that's
do
what
love
I've
six
that's what
mana
I've learned
Flame
about
Tongue.
you.
I mean, it's a great card, right? You got to work for it again because you have to have Delirium at this point. But can I interest you in chaining these together? Like the second one's going to deal 4, and then they're both going to deal 4 to a creature.
I think this card is great.
Yeah, this card is just great. It's going to be a pull into red, probably like a B minus.
That makes me think about there. I don't think we talked about it, but there's a Tormenting Voice variant in the format that I think is going to play nicely with Delirium as well.
Next up, we've got Fear of Failed Tests. This is 4 and a blue for an uncommon 2/7. When it deals combat damage to a player, draw that many cards. This is an enchantment creature nightmare. All these fears are really cool. They're very flavorful cards.
I think this is great.
Is it?
Is that crazy?
I mean, I love a scroll thief, so you're not gonna have to do too much to convince me that this is great.
What? Maybe blue green doesn't care about this, but I think every other blue deck likes this. Maybe blue white doesn't.
Blue white definitely doesn't. Blue
But you,
black
but
does.
like,
Maybe blue red.
but sneaking this through, like doing some stuff, like tap a thing, bounce a thing, whatever, and then this gets through.
Five mana 2/7s. Tough stats.
I don't know. It blocks like a brick wall.
Yeah, that's the nice thing. And then they also have to respect Fear of the Crackback.
Yeah.
It's got the scroll thief text in that way, kind of on steroids. I don't. It's a really hard card to evaluate.
Here's what I'm.
I am predisposed to love this card.
Just like really try and put yourself in a game of
Magic the
Duskmourn.
Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh. What are we talking here?
Just really try and put yourself in a game of Duskmourn Limited, and on turn 5, your opponent plays this. I think the game changes. Like that's what you're always telling me about Scroll Thief.
Scroll Thief, yeah.
And this is that, like you said, on steroids because it's not a body you get to ignore. Like you can ignore a 1/3. You can't ignore a 2/7, and I don't mean in the sense of like you're not attacking through this. Like, like this is just owning the battlefield a little bit.
Sure. I think this is great in blue black. I think this is a 1 probably.
I think blue red might like this too. Like with Eerie, and just like if blue red is a control deck. So maybe it's
such a tough sell though.
Yeah, 5 mana that doesn't do anything.
But there's the blue white uncommon that makes the enchantments cost less. You can put this down on turn 4.
I think
I'm coming around. I like this card.
I think this card might be great. Next up, we have Fear of Imposters. 1 blue for a 3/2 enchantment creature nightmare with flash. When it enters counter target spell, its controller manifests dread. My inclination is garbage.
It reads so good though.
But manifest dread is so good. Like
I agree, but imagine it's going to be way worse on curve, but you also don't have to try to counter a spell with it. You could just play it as a 3 mana 3/2 flash enchantment to trigger eerie stuff at instant speed. So it's versatile in that sense. And then later in the game, if you counter an expensive play and turn it into a 2/2,
But it's not just a 2/2. That's the thing. Like,
yeah, yeah,
I don't know.
it's close enough to a 2/2, right?
It is. Is it?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
want to like this card. There's a lot
You
going on here. I
like.
agree that there's a lot that makes it worse than how it reads too, but I think
Yes.
there's enough. I think there's enough there.
Here's what I think. I think you've been playing some Vintage Cube, and you think individual spells are more impactful than they are. That like you're
Mr.
like
Counterspell is washed in 2024 over here. Ethan came into my stream and told me the Counterspell was washed in Vintage Cube. Can you believe that?
you were also like mostly a mono red deck, and you were like, I'll take Counterspell. I don't think this is what you want to be doing. Anyway,
This is a 3/2 that turns their good thing into a 2/2.
that could be
It's
better
like
than a 2/2.
it could be better than a 2/2.
You need to focus on the dread a bit more than the
But I think the
manifesting.
enchantment and the flash part could be enough upside. Okay, greater
Yeah,
garbage. This card is not great. I also don't think it's garbage, and there's a tendency because it gives your opponent manifest dread to say it's going to be garbage. I think this will be playable in decks that care about Eerie.
I think you're right. Okay.
So like a 2.
Next is Norin Swift Survivalist. Single red for a 2/1. It can't block. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may exile it, and you may play that card from exile this turn. So, like, if you're attacking with 3 2-power things into a 3 toughness thing, whatever they choose to block, you get to go, all right, fine, I'll exile that and then recast it in my second main.
It's like the worst use case of Essence Reliquary. Is it?
This card seems terrible to me.
Unless you've got ETBs, is it actually terrible? I don't know. There's just it piques my curiosity.
It doesn't pique my curiosity. It just feels so tempo negative to me. Like if what you're choosing to do is like do these like weird attacks. I don't know. Maybe you're pushing a lot of damage that way, and it's
But
something.
then you're not advancing the board. What it does do is it makes your opponent want to run into combat tricks. Like it kind of has that going for it because they kind of have to block.
They kind of have to block. Yeah, and they kind of like have to block your most expensive thing.
Right.
Yeah, you're kind of. I mean, there's some stuff happening here.
There's just like it's a cool card. I don't know if it's good. My gut says that it is not good. If I have to go greater garbage right now, I'm going garbage. But again, it's got my juices flowing.
Mm-hmm. Please don't talk about your juices on the podcast. Next up is Saw, 2 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. It has an equip cost of 2. And whenever a equipped creature attacks, you can sack a permanent other than that creature or Saw if you do draw a card.
This is going to have exactly one home in red-black, I think.
Yeah, and I think remains to be seen how... Do you think it will be good in red-black? There are better sack outlets that we've seen already so far. That this seems extremely clunky that you only get... One of the things that I really like about sacrifice decks is, yeah, you can like do the thing... Like it can be assertive, but it can also grind, and this doesn't let you do that at all because you have to attack.
You have to attack, but it is free when you're attacking. That's not nothing, right? After you equip, if you have attacks.
Yeah, after you've paid 2 for the equip cost, sure.
It gives like kind of turns the thing, but then things are already going well for you if you have good attacks. This is probably garbage.
Yeah, you just like equipment. You are predisposed. That's one of your. You need to sort of calibrate your grades.
It's an Achilles heel of my
predisposed to like equipment.
Ever since I first saw equipment, it happened in Mirrodin. I fell in love. It's been a long time love affair. Next up, we've got Shard Mage's Rescue. This is white for an enchantment aura with flash. Enchanted creature you control. As long as it's entered this turn, enchanted creature has hexproof. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1.
This has to be great, right?
Has to be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Moving on. But it's not going to be great in every deck. Do you think you're playing this in every color pair? Like, what is this? If you have to put it on the number system,
a 4+.
4+, huh?
I mean, it's hard to not like this card. Like, it's combat trick, saves your thing from removal, sticks around, flash aura to trigger Eerie. Like,
yeah, all right, 4+. I'm in.
I mean, maybe black-white doesn't care about this, but even in that deck, you're like, if you're reanimating some big thing, you want to have a way to protect it.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Unwanted Remake, which is white for an instant. Destroy target creature. Its controller manifests dread.
Can we say it together?
3, 2, 1, garbage.
Okay, good. I mean, this is like, it's everything I don't like about your counterspell variant. Like
Yeah,
this is
except the
just
counterspell variant leaves a 3/2 and has modality. This
is
is crazy bad.
Is there anything to be said about this being a 1 mana instant?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Next up, we've got Fear of Lost Teeth. This is black for a 1/1 enchantment creature. At common, whenever it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target, and you gain 1 life.
I was messaging you early in the format that I lied earlier that I did message about this one card because I was like, isn't it just nice under the number system? Just call this a 4 and move on. But I don't think it is. I think you're more right. Like this is like a 1 or a 0, probably. Like I was thinking this was before a lot of the cards were previewed. I was thinking that like this being an enchantment was going to feel a bit more special, but there seems to be enchantments galore.
I don't know. I'm kind of coming the other way on it. Isn't this similar to? I always underrate this type of card. It's like what was it from AFR? Is it like Scrabbling Ghoul or something? Like the
Oh
1/1
yeah,
that
yeah.
dies to give something
Mm-hmm.
-1/-1 or make a
Mm-hmm.
treasure.
It's that.
It's that, and I always underrate that type of card. Plus, it's got the enchantment synergy running around for blue black Eerie. It's a nice piece of sacrifice fodder for red black. It's going to be able to trade with 2 drops
Well, this
in
is also
combat.
really nice. This is really nice for blue black control specifically when you're on the draw. Like this is just
Why
a
is
nice.
that?
Well, it's just nice to have like a 1 mana thing that can trade with your 2 drop, with your opponent's 2 drop.
That's fair. It's also going to embarrass the top common in the format, Wary Watchdog, one in a green 3/1 ETB
How does
Surveil one.
embarrasses it because it trades with it, or because in your scenario, I have my deck that's 23 wary watchdogs,
Hell yeah, you do. You're going to
and
play
you have
2 Wary Watchdogs. I'm going to play my single Fear of Lost Teeth. Absolutely savage you. And win my thousands of dollars that we wager here.
I'll never financially recover. All right, great on Fear of Lost Teeth. I'm into it. Next up, we have Turn Inside Out, single red instant. It's a common. Target creature gets +3/+0 until end of turn. When it dies this turn, manifest dread. This is just great, right?
That's my inclination, but
Maybe,
it's not just blanket
maybe,
great. Never going to be a high pick.
yeah. Like it's not in the B range, but other than red blue, if I'm thinking about that as a room's probably control deck, feels like every deck is happy with this, but potentially multiple copies of this. Like
Mm,
the what? Are you going to talk about red green again? Are
no,
you
I
going to
just
yell at me about red green Stompy again? Because red green Stompy does like this
Red Green Stormy does like this because it's an instant. Yeah,
because
I
it's instant,
agree.
and and then gives you manifest to
Manifest
then
Dread to help fill
get.
stuff. That's going to be its best home is Red Green Stompy.
Yeah, but red
I
white
think.
aggro, whatever that deck is going to like it because it's a trick. Plus, you get +2 a 2/2 coming into play.
Right, maybe a 2. Like this may be a 2 minus or something. Like
Nah, I think this is going to be a 4.
no, you're going
Yeah,
to get this card for free, and it's never going to make every deck. You're going to be
and
cutting this card left and right.
nah, this is good. Red black likes
Mm,
this too because it turns you because you're playing your Fear of Lost Teeth. You're playing the whatever the red 1 drop that when it dies you get to like have a little card selection.
But you could never cast this into open mana. This no, I refuse.
It's a 4. Next
No,
question.
no. Next up is Creeping Peeper. 1 and a blue for a 2/1 common eye, and it taps to add a blue. Spend this mana only to cast an enchantment spell, unlock a door, or turn a permanent face up. That's a lot of stuff.
So if this isn't a 0, it's just going in blue red, right? Maybe blue black.
I mean, it
I guess
depends
it
on
does
your
a lot, right?
enchantment count and Manifest
Enchantment
Dread. It potentially hits all the blue archetypes.
potentially hits all the blue archetypes.
Like the 2/1 body, I don't love. I wish it were a
Yeah.
1/3.
That's why I still just feel like it's 0 in the sense of like, yeah, you'll play this, but I don't think this is gonna matter.
It's also going to get savaged by Fear of Lost Teeth again. Like,
There you
just
go. Yeah, I'm
I think if I have to put a thing on this, I'm going to say garbage.
garbage. Yeah, that's where I'm at too.
And lastly, we've got Patchwork Beastie here. Green for an artifact creature beast. This is an uncommon 3/3 for a single green. Delirium can't attack or block unless there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill a card.
Yeah, this is probably great.
This is definitely great. It's going to be outstanding in black
Black
or green.
green.
Also just giving you card selection. I guess you don't get to see the card
Does not
before
give you
you
card
mill it.
selection.
Does not give you card selection. I take that back, podcast listeners.
But it's just good in black green. I mean,
Red green also.
okay, you can't. So I'm allowed to say this is good in red green.
Why
You
can
are
I
not.
not?
You are not
Because I've been hating on red green.
Well, because if I were to be like, this is good in red green, you'd be like, no, it isn't. It can't attack or block, and that's what red green needs to do. That's what you would say to me.
It's going to be a 1-mana thing that gives you a 3/3 that's still going to be a relevant attacker.
I said that was true about say its name as a 2-mana thing. You were like, you can't do that in an aggro deck. Like, you can't have it both ways.
Say its name doesn't leave around a 3/3 on the battlefield afterwards.
But
They're very different cards. All right, folks, we need to wrap this up. Tensions are getting high. On that note, thank you for listening to this episode of Lords of Limited. And thank you as always to Salty Pretzels for our intro and outro music.
I can't go just yet. I can't go.
We can't go. We can't wrap
such an abrupt ending.
I'm trying to hook you off the stage. The cane came on stage and it's grabbing you off.
Okay, that's fair. You can find all of our content on our website at lordsoflimited.com. Links to our episode backlog, our YouTube channel, our Twitch streams, respectively. Ben, we got the Mob 1. Ben streamed Vintage Cube this week. You love to see it. You love to see more of it. You can find also our tier lists, our merch, courtesy of TeePublic, all that stuff available at lordsoflimited.com.
If you've got any feedback about the show or any questions, shoot us an email at lordsoflimited@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week for... oh boy, strap in for the Crash Course episode.
Now we got all the arguing out of the way. We won't have any grade differences next week.
That's right.
All right, thanks everybody. See you later.